Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Switzer. I'll be presenting today's Pecha Kucha on the article Creative and Innovative Online Teaching Strategies, Facilitation for Active Participation. This is an article by Ligsa Sharaf. The article really starts with an introduction, sets the context of how innovation and creativity can enhance online learning, and then goes into a discussion and kind of details the process of how this author, an educator, how this educator's journey through a number of different online learning courses that he or she has led. The author shares the experience, the process, gives a little template, teaching style, and then kind of outlines some success or positive attributes that one can bring to online learning and encourage participation. Really, the reason I chose this article to do this assignment on is really stems from where we are in terms of the world right now and the COVID-19 pandemic. I think educators all over the world have had to pivot to online learning or distance learning or e-learning, whatever name you want to call it. But there's been a little sprint to the finish with this school year. But it's seeming now that some form of online learning will be here for the foreseeable future. And so as educators who have made this pivot, I think it's essential that we get grounded in solid research and understanding of what differences there are to e-learning or online learning, and what are important attributes to take or to take away from the learning experience. The first part of the article really was laying the groundwork for what this author or educator felt was important in terms of the learning process. I actually found it a little bit wordy, a little bit too broad in terms of the use of education jargon. Collaborative learning was important. Developing relationships, self-directed, proactive learning, complex reasoning skills, encouraging reflective practice, increased confidence in students, exploring, reflecting on own assumptions, critically analyzing beliefs and judgments, integrating, connecting. I'm not disagreeing with all these different pieces that go into teaching and learning. We all know that teaching is a highly complex profession, and learning, we're still, as a species, understanding how brain science works and how people retain knowledge. But I thought the author could have maybe focused the thought a little bit more to it. But I did. I focused it, and I took a few things that I thought were really important in terms of setting the stage for successful online learning. One is that it needs to be collaborative. And as you can see in this little picture below, I think developing relationships or developing community, even though there's the online platform, is really important. I think the courses and the classes that we set out to really define who we are as a group of learners are the ones that set the groundwork and framework for good learning to come. I also think that our goals are really to increase confidence in our students and encourage reflective practice. And so these are done in the classroom, but they also have some there's a transferring of skills that can happen in online learning as well. So those 2 to 3 points are really what I thought the author needed to set the stage for her own journey into explaining the successes she's had or he had with online learning. So as they got into talking about setting up successful online learning courses, the one really important part is clarity. There is a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes pre-course on making sure there is clarity in the syllabus, making sure there's clarity in the criteria for success, making sure there's criteria for the timeline of learning. It also is really important, the organization of the online learning. And online learning can be done in many, I think most of our schools have a platform or a framework that we have chosen for online learning. And organizing the course with defined deadlines and clear expectations and the ability to find and communicate information is really important. So the clarity and organization is really essential for the planning part of online learning. The author also talks about being realistic about faculty training in terms of professional learning and development needed for the integration of online learning. The technology is our best friend at times, and it's our enemy in other times. And so ensuring that our faculty and our teachers are comfortable and confident in using the tools and the pedagogy of online learning is critical for that success to happen in the online learning classroom. They also spoke about a repetition of information, and that communication is really important in the online learning classroom. Repeating the syllabus of expectations and announcements reinforces and seeks clarity for the student. Of course, there's flexibility that comes with any learning. Unexpected situations happening, learners taking more or needing more time in terms of reinforcement. But the groundwork of organization and of repeating the really important parts throughout the online learning platform is something important and to keep in mind. So at this point, I think I'm starting to, as we go through this article and start to ask some questions, I think online and building community, like I said before, is one of the most important things as we start out in an online class. And how do we build these? How do we build this community? How do we develop relationships by being distant with each other? How do you engender some trust with you as the teacher and with the students, between the students? And how do you encourage collaboration? I think this clarity and trust in the teacher needs to happen first. And the author gives a few little kind of recommendations or tidbits of how to at least start this process. And that's about, the author shared about virtual office hours and making sure that students know that you're available, and then consistently communicating, whether by email and being clear to say, I will get back to you in 48 hours or 24 hours, whatever it is. And then that group dynamics. We hear that all the time in terms of success in the classroom and relationships. How do you manage this in a distance or an online learning platform? Is there an ideal number of students for online learning? And the author goes into some more kind of specific recommendations that they have found over their experience. They talk about having too few students in an online learning environment leads to kind of a lack of robust discussion. But too high a number of students makes it a little arduous for engagement, both from the teacher standpoint, but also and more importantly, from the student standpoint. But there is a need to to kind of connect the students, so to speak. The author used an example of question from a colleague. This was something that they set up in their online classroom, and It was about if there was some clarifying questions that were being asked, that they would clarify first with a classmate before going to, say, the teacher. And this kind of built community and built trust with each other, but also cultivated kindness in the class. Another aspect of online learning that this article spoke about was the need to organize learning modules for students. And this takes a lot of time and pre-planning and preparation. One tip that this author said is whether it's a semester class or a whole year class, having the titles linked to the syllabus and directly to the learning outcomes was a really great way of reinforcing those expectations for the class. Tapping into the different learning styles in terms of the learning activities that you plan out for your class as well is really essential to help students successfully achieve the learning outcomes of the class. So whether it's working with presentations and articles, YouTube videos, TED Talks, the voice threads, screen capture, individual and group work, what was kind of hit home is that just like in a regular classroom, we need to really reach out to the different learning styles in our online classroom as well. One aspect of the online learning that I think we all have a lot of experience with in our Endicott online learning is the online discussion board. And so leveraging the power of rich discussion and dialogue is really an important part of online learning, and something that naturally we miss from being present with people in the classroom. So having a format for discussion board, having clear expectations of when posts should happen, how the responding to classmates should happen, if there is deadlines for this, if there are a numeral expectation for this, that's really important for setting the ground lines for online discussion board. One idea that the author also shared was having a weekly group leader. So this would be the first poster to the expectation would be to first post on this discussion board. And then at the end of the week, summarize the weekly discussion when they came together for a synchronous class time. Feedback was also a really important aspect, as we know in our in-person teaching and learning. But immediate and specific feedback goes a long way. And so your role as a teacher in the online discussion board and the online facilitator is really important. One, for giving feedback to students and their thoughts and in the discussion board, but also modeling for students what an engaged participant in the class should look like. And finally, one of our last slides here is there's also a need for lots and lots of resources for the class. There needs to be a place to organize files and different resources that they can get at. And the author kind of wraps up with a metaphor about being a guide for students as they kind of wade through the learning on the online platform. And as we have set out, most students now over the last 3 months, will have had the opportunity to kind of put their feet into the water, so to speak, with online learning. But it's now up to us as the guide to kind of wade in a little bit deeper in terms of planning and preparing and executing a really successful online experience for our students. So thank you. Thank you. I just like on an online class, I welcome any feedback that you can share, and I hope everyone's doing well. Thanks.